Hi and welcome everybody. This is Lisa Fain. I'm the CEO of Center for Mentoring Excellence, but I'm actually here in my capacity as an ambassador to the International Mentoring Association Board for the continuation of our series of discussions with mentoring experts. And I'm so excited to be here today with Carol Radford. I learned about Carol when I attended her recent IMA webinar. And I want to tell you a little bit about her before we dive into our discussion. Carol is the founder of Mentoring in Action, which I love that title because it really is about action. She received her EDD from Harvard, where she focuses her studies on teachers' leadership, preparing cooperating teachers and professional development. In more than 20 years as a public school teacher, which is a great way to get your chops, Carol. I can't wait to talk to you about that. She's received numerous teacher leadership awards, among them the prestigious Krista McAuliffe Fellowship, which is sponsored by the U.S. Department of Education. And she's used these experiences to design and share teacher leadership models. She served in higher ed for 20 years as an administrator, a licensing officer, and an alternative certification program director at Boston College. She's also working at the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth, where she prepared and supported career changers to work in New Bedford and Fall River schools in a program called Teach South Coast. She's collaborating with the Massachusetts Department of Education, where she's designed a program for mentors in a train-the-trainer model, and it's been used by more than 80 districts to support the preparation of mentors. Carol, welcome. I'm so happy that you're here.
Thank you, Lisa, so much for inviting me. And before I begin, I just want to honor your wonderful and skillful and reflective mom who started the center, Dr. Lois Lowry. She had inspired me over my career as a mentor, and as I was beginning my mentoring journey, I had an opportunity to meet her. So this center is just a brilliant way for her to keep her influence going. And what better way than have the CEO be her very talented daughter. So thank you. I'm humbled and honored and excited to have a conversation with you about what I love most, mentoring and teaching.
Thank you so much. It's always, it's so gratifying to hear the impact that she's had on other people, and it's so sweet of you to start this way. So I want to start by a question that we didn't prepare, but to talk about this journey from teaching to mentoring. Tell us about how you came to the mentoring field from the teaching world.
So I'm a public school teacher. I taught for 20 years. The very first mentoring experience I had was when a student teacher came into my classroom from higher education. And I remember it distinctly because she came into the room and the supervisor from the college came over and said to me, I said, so what am I supposed to do? And don't worry, you're a great teacher. We placed her with you. Just let her follow you around and do whatever you do and she'll just copy you. And I was like, really? Okay. Yeah. And I loved it. I loved sharing and talking about my classroom because I loved teaching. It was my heart. It was something I always wanted to be a teacher. But I felt that shift when I was sharing with another how to teach. So something inside of me said, there's something missing. I need to be more systematic about the way I'm mentoring. And my observation in the school was that anyone who had a different teacher, it was a different kind of mentoring. And everybody talks in the teacher's room. So it would be like, oh, you got so-and-so, she doesn't make you do anything. Oh, you got so-and-so, she leaves the classroom. So you can just teach and do whatever you want. And I sat back and said, this is not right. So I actually wrote my very first book on a grant that the school was offering, and it was called So You're Going to Be a Cooperating Teacher. And it was a book for cooperating teachers who were mentoring. And the college immediately came over and wanted to know what I was doing. And that was my first connection to higher education and being interested in teacher education. So I'd probably been teaching for maybe 18 years, and I was skilled in the classroom. I loved it. But that started, the mentoring started me thinking, maybe I will be a teacher educator. I didn't know it all at the time, but it came in through student teachers. And then it just kept rippling, taking a job in higher education, getting my doctorate, studying teacher leadership because the mentor is a teacher leader. But I was very interested, Lisa, in the common language, which evolved through my books. And like the question that the teachers always would ask me, they'd say, what are we supposed to be talking about? What are we supposed to be talking? So they maybe understood the theory, but they didn't understand the mentoring conversation, and that a mentor needed to prepare for these meetings, that it wasn't just follow me around and watch me teach. And that's where my inspiration came from. And I read your mom, I read everybody's mentoring books, and it inspired me to start writing my own books. And I've been doing it for decades now. So
I love to hear that. You know, I'm here in Washington State, and here in Western Washington, a lot of our school districts have teacher coaching programs. And as somebody who thinks about mentoring a lot, I've always wished that it was mentoring and not coaching, because I just think that there's such a need.
Yes, and there are some similarities between the coaching, but when somebody asks me what the difference is, I believe the mentoring relationship in the mentoring word is integral to that kind of a relationship. And it doesn't mean the mentor doesn't coach, but a lot of coaches had a very specific thing they were coaching for. And a lot of it for me related to professional development, getting the teacher to do XYZ. It wasn't as inspired of a relationship where the mentee actually has some part in the conversation. Whereas a coach, it's like, well, we're going to coach you around this new model that we're implementing in our district. Do you think that?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. I often say, you know, when people ask me the difference, because I have this conversation all the time, I would say it's probably the number one question that I'm asked these days is, okay, so what really is the difference between mentoring and coaching?
So how did you respond to it? Is it the way?
Yeah. I'll tell you the example that I use, and I'd love your thoughts on this. So what I usually say is, if you were hiring me as your coach and you wanted to work on a vision, you would come expecting me to have a toolkit that I use, right?
Okay.
You know, come in the door. And, you know, of course it would depend how I use it based on what your needs are, but I would have a series of methodology or tools as your coach that I would use. But as your mentor, I don't come with the tools. I come with the questions. And so maybe the skills of listening are the same, but the methodology is significantly different. And to me, that's where the
and I think the outcome is a little different too. Like I keep trying to talk to mentors when I do presentations and do some writing. It's not to make you a clone of me. I don't want you to follow me around and do it the way I do. I want you to reflect, but the outcome is that the students in this classroom are successful. Like that's teacher education mentoring. Is like the goal is about the students. But most recently, I'm working on a new book, and I've been reading a lot. So I've been re-inspired by John Dewey. And one of the things, when education came to be in teacher ed in 1917, when he wrote these papers, it was not just to have students learn the skills. It was to have them be the best version of themselves. He said their highest potential. And sometimes the testing and all these other objectives for coaches and school districts, because that's my context for mentoring. But if it's business or nursing, it's that success, however you define it, can fit into that. It's what if it was for the teachers to be meet their highest potential, and not just be the conduit for delivering the content in the history? No, it isn't that. It's like what makes that teacher full, whole, their well-being, their joy, so they're not just delivering something. And I think that fits for other professions as well, nursing and business. And like I'm not just the pass-through, I'm actually an equal partner. But then the mentor has to also allow the mentee. That's what makes it different from coaching. Those questions, but the mentee can ask questions too. In the two books I wrote, I list questions, potential questions a mentee can ask, because guess what? They don't know what to ask. So if the mentor says, do you have any questions for me? A lot of my mentees would say, I don't know what to ask her. And I go, well, here's 5 questions. Which one of these 5 do you think? Because I've worked with so many new teachers, I knew what they would ask. So I put the questions together so they could pick a question instead of just like, I don't have a question.
I love that because that actually helps the mentees drive the relationship,
Yes,
which is really
to empower the mentee to be a full partner in the relationship.
The other thing I really love about the way you're thinking about this, Carol, is, you know, it's important to, obviously you're looking at outcomes for students, right? Because that's what education is about. But if you want to innovate, if you want teachers who are going to be able to relate to the changing needs of students, they have to have this fullness of engagement in order to be able to do that. And so that's super duper exciting. Well, I want to shift just a little bit and talk about mentor training programs, because I know you've done a lot of creating mentor training programs. And I want to ask you what you think the components are for a successful mentor training program. And while you're talking, I know you had some thoughts that you sent to me, so I'm just going to put those on the screen as well.
Yes. So I'm going to talk about how to sustain a program in a minute, but let me just give you five things that I include in my mentor training programs.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then I'm going to talk a little about this slide as well. Sure. So here's the thing. I believe you have to prepare a mentor. And I try not, I say mentor training because that's the word that's used across business and it's training. But I remember one of my mentors saying, you train a dog, you don't train a teacher. And I'm like, oh, and it stuck in my head, but I understand the word training. So I try to say preparation and support for mentors. So on the bottom, you'll see preparing and supporting mentor leaders. So I like to think about mentors in education or in any field as being a leader. Now, the first thing I like to do in a mentor training program, mentor preparation program, is to have the mentors assess and acknowledge what they bring to the relationship. And I think we skip that step a lot of times because we get right into the doing of it. We want to do mentoring. We want to tell people what to do. But if you acknowledge and assess your own skills and your own biases and your own stereotypes and your own experiences, because every mentee isn't going to be like you. And in fact, I love the work you're doing about inclusion and looking at people that are different, because that means the mentor is not just driving the conversation, but listening to how someone else may think differently. Yeah. So acknowledge and assess your own skills. And I do that in all my workshops. And I do it in my books that you'll share. The second, because of my mindfulness bent, I became a yoga teacher in 2014, and that influenced a lot of my work about programs, is to be in the present moment in a mentoring conversation. In fact, that was my webinar. How can a mentor inspire mentee in 10 minutes or less? And if you can't do that, then you're not present. And there are, like you say, that's part of the coaching too, but it's being present to the moment. And what does that look like? Your phone is not on. You're not checking your phone. There's a sign on the door that says, be with you in 10 minutes. There's a million strategies for that, but it ultimately comes down to eye contact, relationship, like where's the heart in this? The heart connection. The third thing is creating opportunities where the mentee can talk. So I do this whole other toolkit thing with my mentors and it's through what you and I were talking about, the questions. And it's so interesting because mentors don't even think about it. I said, well, how can you get your mentee to talk more? I don't know. I say this or that. And I said, well, you have to give the right question. Ask a question and they will talk. But don't ask the question, how's it going? Because that's a different response. Ask, what did you do in class today that you think that students, that influence their learning today? Oh, they have to think for a moment. So intentional questions that are thoughtful that get to the impact that you want, which is student learning, whatever the impact is you're looking for. So that's the third thing. I also believe we can do it better. Like we as mentors in all of my programs, the component of a mentor training, a mentor prep, support is reflection. like reflecting after each conversation for 1 minute. What could I have done differently? Oh, I didn't listen as long. I don't mean to beat ourselves up, but you're just for the next meeting, but it's about me instead of, oh, she's not listening to me, instead of blaming the mentee. Oh, I didn't get a good mentee. This isn't the one that I want.
Yeah.
It shifts the onus of the mentoring to us. We're the leaders. We're the leader of it. And yes, we want them to be full partners, but we want to step into that leadership role. And for teachers, again, I'm speaking for teachers, so business people and nursing and military, you know, it might be a little different. We tend to like to sit back and then say the boss didn't do it right because it's a little easier.
Right. But you know what? I think it's totally applicable across industries, Carol, because what you're talking about is ownership. Is
Yes.
really taking ownership.
And we have to own that we're the leader of the conversation, but that doesn't mean the other partner doesn't have time to talk.
Beautiful.
And then we listen. And then the last thing really relates to what we're doing right now is in all of my preparation, I say, get into a mentoring community. So all of the mentors in my workshops have partners. Mentor partners. You debrief with that other mentor. It isn't like mentors and mentees, it's mentor community. So I would have meetings at my school when I was still teaching in K-12 and even in higher ed, just the mentors. All of the mentors are going to meet. And then we can problem solve and how we can do it better. And yeah, do complaints come up about their mentees? Of course. But that way I can diffuse it in a different way so that we can look at the mentoring as it is a paradigm of the way we bring people into our professions. It's like, how do we want to bring people into our professions? We call in education, it's called induction. It sounds military-ish, but it's inducting someone in. And a mentor is a big part of that. It's not the only part, but that mentoring culture, if mentors, I do believe this, and I say it to my own mentees, if mentors have this common language and this way of looking that we're responsible to, that shifts the culture of a school. That can totally do the tipping point. I believe that. Yeah. So I think having those 5 kind of thoughts in any mentor preparation program, I've learned that over 20, 30 years. Those are key pieces to keeping it. But then here's the question on sustaining. A lot of places say, oh, we get it going and it all works. And then it goes away. Like we just can't sustain mentoring because it becomes this fluffy thing. It's mentoring, it's coaching, it's if a budget gets cut in the schools, well, what are you going to cut? You're going to cut something that isn't real. It's invisible. So I have these 3 ways of, these are my magic ways. That magic bullets, right? That when you're designing a program, so now I'm talking program, I'm not talking individual mentor. Yep, you're a mentor leader. Mentors are leaders. Let's step into that. Let's own it. We're a group now. We're not individuals. She's better than me. And then on the left, you can see identify needs of mentees. So right away in every profession, there are different needs as people enter. And that's the Maslow's survival thing. We've got to find their needs or they're not going to buy in. Nobody's going to buy in. Our teachers do not want to go to an extra meeting. But if you make it worth my while, if my need is such that you're going to help me pass my teacher evaluation, or you're going to help me get my classroom management under control, I'm going to listen. Mm-hmm. So my biggest insight, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, was to align my mentoring books that I wrote to the current teaching standards. And what that did was got buy-in from the school administrators. It got buy-in from the mentees who didn't want to be mentored because they're like, I'm busy, I got to pass my evaluation. So the mentoring conversation became couched or overlaid or aligned to what they needed to do to be successful to get rehired?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think that became so important for my statewide work with the Department of Education, because then mentor leaders could also embrace that the conversation was lined up. And you know what I discovered, Lisa? People didn't even know what standard they were talking about. They were just having a great conversation about passing out papers. Well, that's a standard that people know how to do that
Yeah, yeah.
or whatever skill. So what do you think so far of what I'm saying? And then I'll do my other two.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important. And also, the other thing it speaks to is how things evolve within an organization, that even the same mentoring program might need to be different year after year as things change and evolve. Imagine
Yes.
establishing a mentoring program in school A in 2019 even, and here in
Yes.
2020 post-pandemic, what does it look like, right?
Yes.
So you may have
Yes.
learned as a teacher what how your own skills need to evolve in a hybrid virtual versus live world, and that's going to
Exactly.
be reflected
And
in here.
that has to be aligned with whatever the organization is now doing. So you're aligning it to the hybrid standard now, that it's okay to talk on the phone. Before, everything had to be face-to-face, side-to-side. So your mother's probably thinking about this too, and I'm thinking about it, like, well, how do those standards in building a relationship change as you're aligning your mentoring conversations and your purpose of mentoring? So the second thing to sustaining is to differentiate.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of the mentoring programs in education and in business and everywhere, it's just like one size fits all. We're just checking off this box. We're checking off that you did it because you have to, it's required.
Right.
But when you really differentiate with someone who's a career changer coming in, someone right out of college needs a very different kind of mentoring conversation. Age is a factor. Sometimes the mentor is 10 years younger than the mentee. So there'll
Right.
be an age differential. It can't just be this one size fits all. So I learned that, and that's what makes the mentoring so robust. It makes the relationship. When you start to differentiate, then the two people actually get to know each other, because you have to differentiate. You're not just going by the book.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that is group mentoring. And I don't know if that was Lois's, if I got inspired by that there or wherever I heard it. I was like, why can't we have mentoring groups? Who says it? Well, the state said just one-on-one mentoring. Well, the novice teachers want to be together. They don't want to just be one-on-one with their mentor. So the differentiation also allows us to say, you know what? That teacher doesn't need one-on-one. She needs a group.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's what's the impact of this? We have to intentionally focus. It's the why. Why are we even doing it? Are we doing it because it's required, or are we doing it because we think it's the best for the novice teacher? Are we trying to retain people? And in my work with districts, when I'm doing my assessment of the district, that's the first question I ask them. Why are you doing this? Oh, the state says we have to. Well, maybe I don't want to collaborate with them because that's more perfunctory. Like,
Right.
do you have your heart in it? Do you want your teachers to be successful? What is your intentional focus? And that's part of my mindfulness piece that led more into my well-being work, and then finding out that they're so stressed out. And there'll be different kinds of stress now after COVID, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here too.
Yeah.
So
I want to switch to the wellness and mindfulness in a second, but one of the things that I think is so important about this third step in your on this chart here, the idea of impact is it helps you determine what you need to be measuring, right? I mean, it might even seem obvious, but if you're focusing on impact and what the desired impact is, then you can figure out how you're going to determine success, which in turn will help you align to the mentoring standards and differentiate the needs of the mentees, right?
Absolutely, you got it. And that will sustain a program, because that's how all the mentoring programs that I'm working with in my state get sustained, because we have data. We prove the impact. more teachers stayed in that district, or teachers that didn't have a retention issue, they scored higher, or like they were just more successful with their students. And it's self-efficacy. They just are happier teachers in their school because they have these groups. And that is part of that well-being and joy that I think we get away from with all the testing, and all of that got us off track. And I think mentoring programs and centers like yours and international mentoring, they just keep us focused on mentoring is a thing. It's a relational environment that can improve whatever organization you're in. I believe that. I do believe that.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. All right, let's shift to the well-being piece, because one of the things that I think is so unique about your work, Carol, is really this combination of mindfulness and mentoring. So you mentioned before you became a yoga teacher. Tell us how you made that link between what you were learning in yoga and what you were doing in your day job, so to speak.
I know. So in 2014, I was going to stay at the university and be an adjunct professor and teach courses online in mentoring, because I have mentoring in action. That's my work. Mm-hmm. And I took yoga. I decided I wanted to go to yoga classes and know what I was doing. And I'd always thought about being a yoga teacher. So I did my certification, 200 hours and more. And what I discovered, Lisa, was it wasn't so much about the yoga and the postures and the poses. It was actually about me being still and quiet. It was the meditation. So what happened is the yoga community, it gave me permission to look at my mentoring and action website, my small business. So I decided to start my own small business, mentoring and action. I already had my books, but then it was like, well, what do I really want to do here? And a mindful living journal, and this is my art. So in yoga, my art came out. I have no idea from where. I don't consider myself an artist, but I guess I am an artist because I was drawn to pastels. So all of the illustrations in both of these books are my original pieces of art. And I did the Mindful Living Journal first, just because the teachers are so burnt out. So I wanted to create a wellness activity that didn't relate to the mentoring conversation at school about teaching, that this was just for them, and they loved it. And then I went to an International Mentoring Association conference, and I did a pre-conference on mindful mentoring. So I actually designed this book, A Reflective Guide for Mentors and Mentees, for that conference. And these are both driven by values conversations. So the conversations in the book about building relationships through values. And mindful mentoring is really about getting to know each other. And I like what we were talking about earlier, like having mentors and mentees not be matched because they're alike, but be matched because they're as different as they could be. How exciting is that? To see how people can respond to a question like, how do you respond to change in your life? The value of change. How do you relate to change on an emotional level? And some people might be like, I love change. I love change. Some people are like, I hate change. Oh my God, don't change anything. But to know that about each other. So in mindful mentoring, these conversations are all about the mentor and mentee exploring their values. And I use the definition value to mean your opinion about your open heart. What does dedication mean to you? What does energy mean to you? When do you have energy at a certain level? What does growth mean? All of those kinds of values, as opposed to mentoring principles. Mm-hmm. So that's now gotten embedded into my second edition books at Corwin, all of my presentations. I'm teaching courses online for well-being and mentoring. And I think we mentor each other. So the Mindful Mentoring book is kind of interesting. It's designed that each person has their own copy of the book.
I love that.
The mentor just doesn't drive it. and you each reflect. It's a journal.
Yeah.
And then you share what your reflection is. So
that's great, because I think the outcome is going to be growth for the mentor as well, which is
yes.
super important. Yeah.
Anyway, I love it. And they're pretty too.
They're beautiful. They're beautiful. How great to discover your own artwork, your own artistic nature in the
I
course of all
love
this.
that. I know.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying
That's
it.
so great. Well, I know you have a couple other books too, which I've put up on the screen. Tell us about these books.
So I love these books. You notice the trees. So these are my second editions from Corwin Press, and I have happy to say they reach bestseller in like 1 year. So these are being used all over the country, and it follows that same idea of the mentor and the mentee both having a book, like my mindful mentoring book guide. So the mentoring in action book is the teacher's book. It's the mentor's book, and it goes through all of the month-by-month conversations. So it's designed for teachers month by month, but any profession could benefit clearly from the types of conversations, or use it as a model. And then the first year's matter, becoming an effective teacher, is the book the novice teacher has in her hands or his hands. So when you come to a meeting, you both have a book. There's no power dynamic. The novice teacher can read that whole book over the summer if they want to. And that book is designed for the first 3 years of teaching, because you don't learn to be a teacher in 1 year. And it's full of resources. I love what Corwin did with it, the design. It has videos. All of my videos are in there, QR codes and questions, and it's practical, and it's being used across the country. I just actually did a webinar, actually a Zoom meeting with 800 people in South Dakota.
Wow, that's great.
The other day, because I was supposed to be there live and I couldn't be there for the keynote. So we did it, and the whole state is using both of these books. And what I was so happy to hear, they used the first year matter for the second year teachers, and when they did their exit interview, all of the second year teachers said, you should have given us this book last year. So now they're using it first year and second year teachers, which is really my goal.
That's really terrific. That's really terrific.
So I'm
they're
excited.
beautiful as well, but the idea is, something that's really tailored for the learning needs of each of the people who have it in their hands, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because they can differentiate. So what I shared about sustaining programs, that's what this book is. How to align it to your, I actually have a phone call on Monday with a teacher from Iowa, and she wants to take these books and map them to the Iowa state standards. So I'm going to just show her how she can do that. And that's my pay it forward. I want to pay it forward. I've had a fabulous career. I love teaching. I love mentoring. I love talking with you about mentoring. I'm such a geek on this stuff.
I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
So I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to share what I love with you and this audience.
Great. Well, Carol, I put up on the screen here how folks can get in touch with you. We'll also make sure that when this is posted on the IMA YouTube channel, that those connections have live links in the notes below the video, so people can just click right on that as well. Any sort of parting words or thoughts about what is exciting you right now about the field of mentoring?
So I am excited. Well, right now I'm working on a new project. It's a new book, and the new book is called For Those Who Teach. And it is a wellness book in many ways, guiding principles from my whole career in teaching. And these principles are coming with stories, and they're messages for teachers and higher ed professionals to tell their stories. And I'm in production now. It's out for review. It will have all my original artwork in it. I'm so excited about that. And then I'm also currently taking a course with a teacher in California, and she does forest bathing. I don't know if you know what that is.
Well, explain for folks who are watching what forest bathing is.
Yes, so forest bathing is wellness. That is a Japanese doctor. Basically, it's taking a walk in the woods to calm yourself down, but it is medically proven. So I'm taking a course to design a legacy program. So what I'm most excited about, and maybe you and I can talk later and brainstorm, is a legacy teacher program for retired teachers. because I would like to create a way to capture the wisdom of those teachers who retire in a center of some sort where they can contribute their wisdom and their stories and their ideas to the next generation of teachers in a systematic way. So those are my two big projects, because I'm not giving up.
Yeah. I love the way you're really thinking. I mean, you're combining sort of the Eastern and Western traditions into into mentoring as
Yes,
well. That's
and
really,
being
really
still. So the mindfulness and this it's called the Tree Ring course with Julia Plevin is about being more still, because I have a very active mind. So the mindfulness piece, so that I can develop a center that comes from the heart, that brings people in to the circle and still be purposeful as contributing mentors to this wonderful career as teachers, instead of just going away with a little watch and you're done, right? So
beautiful. I love it. I love it. Slowing down to speed up too. It's really going to
yes, yes.
Carol, such a joy to talk to you. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom with all of us. I know it's going to benefit folks who are watching. I certainly learned a lot myself. It's hard to take notes and facilitate a conversation at the same time, but I managed to do it, and I know I'll be rewatching this myself as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.